Coffee with Caregivers production costs are covered by a partnership with United Healthcare and the National Foster Parent Association. We receive no federal or state funding and depend on our constituents and viewers to help us achieve our goals to provide support and services that meet identified needs within our mission. We would like to welcome the viewers of Coffee with Caregivers to the family. The National Foster Parent Association offers several membership opportunities for individuals, child placing agencies, and state and local affiliates. You can join today or donate at nfpaonline.org.
Well, good morning. Welcome to Coffee with Caregivers. The NFPA is happy to bring this to you with our sponsor, United Healthcare. As always, we have an incredible guest to talk with in just a few minutes. I wanted to take this opportunity, though, to let you know that this episode will be the last episode that you'll see for 1 month. The way we've set up the program is that we have weekly episodes, January, February, March, and then in April, we take the month off and plan our episodes for the months of May, June, and July. As you can imagine, it takes a lot of time and research and scheduling to identify 12 or more, maybe 13 episodes each quarter, the topics that we want to talk about, people that we want to have as guests to talk about those various topics, and then to do the scheduling for all of that. So we'll be out the month of April, but you can certainly always go back onto our website and our homepage and just click on Coffee with Caregivers and watch some previous episodes if you'd like. I'm sure that there's some you probably haven't seen. And then the first week in May, we'll be back to begin celebrating May as National Foster Care Month. So that'll be an exciting month. We've already got some things that we're thinking of that hopefully will be lots of fun and also valuable to you in your foster care work. A couple of weeks ago, we had guests that, and I have their book here, in Justin and Alexis Black. Their book is Redefining Normal. And they were just a joy to talk with and to learn from. And I was so impressed with them that I decided to go on their website and look at their merchandise. And I wanted to show you the cup I got. It says, "Sorry, I'm busy redefining normal." I love that, right? Now this is one of those cups that you have to put something hot in it because it just looks like a black cup until you put your hot water or your hot coffee, whatever, in there. And but isn't that wonderful? Sorry, I'm busy redefining normal. Awesome, right? Anyway, a cup that I got from myself for a change, because usually I've got people giving me cups because they know that I use one every week for this show. But this one I wanted in particular because I was so impressed with them, and I'm very impressed with redefining normal because, that's what each of us are doing every day now. We don't know what normal is going to be when the pandemic is over and various other things just keep happening in this world. And so sometimes, I regret that we can't go back to the way it was, the way normal was. And then there's other times I'm kind of excited that we got some new opportunities here to make things a lot better than they were. And so, again, one of the many reasons why I'm enjoying my new cup. All right, so I'm not going to talk about anything else right now because I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest today. So there she is, Eshele Williams. Eshele is just a wonderful soul and a friend, and she's a former board member of the National Foster Parent Association, and just brought so much energy and compassion and knowledge to that position and to the NFPA while she served. We miss her. I have to tell you that, Eshele. Don't get to talk to you often enough anymore, so we're going to have to do better at that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I miss you as well.
So I want you to introduce yourself, like I always have the guests do that, because you know what you want this audience to know about you. That's more important than maybe some other things that I'd read off of a resume. So please share with us.
Absolutely. So thank you, Irene and NFPA, for having me. I really appreciate the time that we're going to spend today talking about strength-based language and really getting to take a little bit of a deep dive in a topic that's so important. Language defines a culture. And as language defines a culture, we get to set the tone for how we are going to interact, see, and continue to support children that are impacted by foster care, children that cannot be with their parents. So as we begin to really get into the language, you'll hear some things that you'll say, well, hopefully you think that's a better way to say that because it represents the children that we serve and that we have the privilege of serving. So I am Dr. Eshele Williams, and for Irene that knows me, I'm just Eshele. And what I know is that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So you'll have a conversation with Eshele today. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. My doctorate is in organizational management and consulting. And I've been able to really impact the field of social services and foster care as a frontline therapist for many years, working with foster children or children in care, as well as then working with organizations that do this important work from a clinical supervisor standpoint, as well as an administrative standpoint, and then continuing to do the work as a consultant, working with multiple organizations. I also teach in a master's program for marriage and family therapy called Pacific Oaks. That's here in California. And so I'm kind of spread myself a little bit thin, but every time that I get to sit down and sit with trusted individuals that are really doing the work and making such an impact on children and families, I'm so incredibly proud. So Irene, you introduced your cup, and now I'm going to show mine.
Okay.
So if you could see that, right, it says grateful. And I was given this by one of my supervisees. And I said, well, when am I going to, because I don't actually drink coffee. So I said, when am I going to use this cup? And I said, I can use it as a positive affirmation to remember that each and every day I'm grateful for not only the impact on my own life that foster care has had, but I'm grateful to sit in a space where I can know and understand how amazing it is to be able to do the work every single day. I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful to advocate on children's behalf. And I'm grateful to continue to do that alongside people to become partners in child protection. So I often tell people that it's a privilege to do the work. And the way that I know that is because I recognize the fact that the only way that we could do this work every day and continue to do it, and for some of us, it's our passion and it's our life's mission and it's our dream, we have to remember is the only reason why we get to do this is based on somebody else's loss.
That's exactly right.
And it's a privilege every day to recognize that because of someone's loss and their separation from their family, that I get to step up and be an amazing advocate for them. So I want to say all of the things on their behalf, and I want to do it in such a way that if they looked back at what I was doing and the work that I did over my lifetime, that they would say that they are proud of the work and that the advocate that I am. So this topic today, I'm so happy that you asked me here to do this, to partner with you and to partner with NFPA.
Right. Well, it's near and dear to my heart too. You know, my work career early on, many, many, many years ago, took me in the realm of working with children and adults with disabilities. And so I was a part of that system in Texas. And we, in very early 1980s, determined here, as well as I think others did across the country, how important it is to use language in what we call people first language through the disability arena, right? And so we worked really hard because what I would hear every day at work from my colleagues, from social workers, from case managers, from direct care staff, depending on the setting, was, oh, the guy with CP, you know, or the Downs girl, right? And it really bothered me because it was recognizing something that was only partially important about that person, wasn't the whole person. And we needed to talk about people first language, about who this individual is, and then they may have a need, and then we can talk about that. So I know that here in this state, it took advocates like you and myself about 20 years to actually, I don't know why I'm getting that feedback, but it's terrible. 20 years to actually get people to understand the need to change how they talked about the people that we were working with and how we talked about them ourselves, and to show respect. And that really hit home with me as more and more children joined our family through foster care, because the more experience we got, we were able to open our family to children that had more disabilities. And so we fostered quite a few children that had significant disabling conditions. And that's when it really, hit me that we needed to recognize how people are more like us than they are different from us, right? And I know when I went to we adopted our youngest daughter. She was 5 months old when she came, and she has Down syndrome. She's 36, almost 37 now. And but for her to go to kindergarten, we were having her mainstreamed in classes, and to help the students and the teachers better understand, I do a big poster at the beginning of each school year, and it would have all kinds of photographs on it of her doing everything that all them did, right? Her birthday party, riding a pony, just, swimming, all of the stuff, right, that we all do, and all children do. So I would put on there and, show that she does all those things, and talk with the kids. And I said, so, these are the things that y'all are alike, right? Now here's a poster with the things that are a little different. And so I'd have another one with that showed that she had a hard time expressing herself with words, but she could sure tell you what she needed by using her hands and a few words. And that she wasn't able to count money very well, but that was okay, but she knew money had value, right? And so just a few of those things. It was so successful, and the teachers loved it every year, grade by grade, because the children were learning not to be afraid of her, not to question, should they even be her friend or any of that stuff, because they saw her as somebody way more like them than different. And so when we were able to accomplish that, and that's not just what we say, but how we write about things, how we write reports, how we fill out service plans, how we do IEPs in the schools, right? How physicians talk about us, how our legislators write laws, and how our agencies write policies. Everybody had learned to use different language. That's where we're at now with strength-based language for the foster care system. And we're in a process. So would you kind of talk a little bit about how long this has already been going on? Because this is going to be new for a lot of people that were hearing this today. And I think it'd be important to know how long this has kind of been working on all these things we're going to talk about, so that people have a better understanding of it. Just not something you snap your fingers and everybody says, oh, I like that. Well, I'll say all those things, right? Because even as hard as I try, I still slip up sometimes and say placement, right?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
absolutely. So we're in a process, And it's time that we spread the word, certainly through Coffee with Caregivers, and hopefully through our training institute as well. So I'm hoping you're going to be able to do a workshop on there for us, that we can really start getting to more of the families across the country about why this is important.
So I love, the story that you give and tell, and your true life story about how you have to socialize different people to different aspects of not only the language, but the abilities, capabilities, because when we're thinking about that, then we're talking about differently abled individuals. So we are all differently abled in some way. So ask a person to do math and they go, no, I'm differently able to that category. I don't really like doing that, right? That's somebody else's job, not mine. So why would it be different for a person that has a physical disability? Because we are all differently abled and capable in our own way. So it's an amazing start to having a conversation about how we want to address other individuals. I know in the mental health world, we try to separate the person from the diagnosis. So you wouldn't say the Down syndrome kid, right? You would say the child that's impacted by. There's only one part of them. So you're separating them from the diagnosis, and you don't ever want that to become the identity of the person.
Right.
So as it's not the identity, then you figure out other ways about going about teaching people how to do and say that. So with strength-based language, really dating back to the work of the Child Welfare League of America, so CWLA, it has really been pioneered in their PRIDE model of practice. And that is the resource that helps to support foster and adopt parents when they want to become foster and adopt parents. So it's PRIDE, so it's Parents Resource for Information Development and Education. And what we have to remember is the D is really important, is that development. None of us came here ready and willing to do all of the things that we're doing now. And we have to learn and be developed in certain ways. So I love the fact that Coffee with Caregivers and NFPA and United Healthcare are partnering together in order to do this work and to have the message be brought in such a way. So CWLA has been doing that with their PRIDE model of practice, as well as looking at the Kinship model of practice as well. So it's collaborating with caregivers. And this is what we have been doing and really teaching other people that the language that we use has been passed down. And sometimes we don't ask a question about why it is we use it. The person passed it down to us and we just go ahead and we do what we've done the whole time.
Right.
And now with the strength-based language, and I would love to call it a movement. And with that movement, we're talking about challenging the ways that we've done things forever and ever, and saying it doesn't always have to be that way. We don't always have to do it that way because somebody else said this is how it's done. And that's like the word placements, or even the word up for adoption, or the for adoption, right? We usually don't know where the up for adoption came from. And it is the orphan trains when children were 150 street kids in New York that were trained out west to families. And we're saying up for adoption because when they got off of those trains, they were up on a platform. And usually the townspeople were down and they were saying they wanted to join that particular child with their family, but the children were up. And we talk about being up for adoption, and we say that now as if it's a really great thing. These were orphan children that didn't have anybody, and they were being chosen. And not all of them were treated really well.
Right.
So we have to remember that this language comes out of and is born out of a movement to try to help individuals. And we have to remember that we don't want to hurt them by what they hear coming from us. And we're not always using that person first and that family-friendly language. So I want to thank you for being a champion of using the language. And even though, you might say something that is not, strength-based every now and then, this just shows us that we're human.
Right.
And that we've all got some work to do, because you've been championing this, and NFPA has, along with the Council of State Affiliates.
Yes.
And in all the literature that you're producing and at conferences. And then we also want to really uplift Fostering Families Today magazine.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
as we lift them up, we have to give a great thanks because they have really taught us that this is a great to them. And as it's important to them, then they give us in every single magazine that comes out, they give us the place for an article there on strength-based language. So we really want you to become a person that subscribes to Fostering Family Today magazine and to all of the literature that NFPA provides.
Right. Yeah, Fostering Families Today magazine has just championed the NFPA for a long time, and certainly the strength-based language. I know there's 4 articles in the last 4 issues, right? They
Yes,
come out every 2
absolutely.
months, and I have all of them. I've shared them, copied them all, shared them all so many times already. Um, and they also give NFPA 2 pages for another article that's, something else that we want to highlight about foster care and what foster parents need to know. So, that's huge. And to give that kind of space away, and that they depend on some of their sponsors for that, and certainly subscriptions for that. And it's not an expensive subscription at all because it's only 6 issues a year, but they are such quality issues, right? I mean, absolutely, you want to read every word from cover to cover when you like, oh, which one am I going to read first? No, I want to read all those articles already. When you look down the table of contents, I'm like, oh my gosh, I guess I'll just start the first page and go back because they all look so good. And every issue's that way for me. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, the strength-based language has the initiative, the movement is growing. That's exciting that's happening. And, I think we're going to see hopefully some faster growth in people understanding this and trying to use the more user-friendly words that we're going to give some good examples here in a minute. And you won't be able to remember them all, but you can go to cwla.org and look for their information on strength-based language. They've got great things on there. We've got information on our resources page on our website as well. And I know that Fostering Media Connections, who also actually, I guess, owns Fostering Families Today magazine, in their Chronicles of Social Services, they had an article that you and I actually helped write, I think, with a couple
Yes.
of colleagues on this some years ago already, and which is now called the Imprint for them. And they continue to run articles as well that show evidence that they're practicing using this language. And so, it's starting to spread in ways that's exciting. And I know the CHAMPS campaign is also, they're actually sending me their documents before they send them to DC and to the offices on coming legislation and what they think needs to happen for me to read it, looking for the strength-based language and making sure that they've covered the bases appropriately and not use some of the older phrases. Well, that's really exciting. So when we get that kind of thing going, I think we're going to see this kind of exponentially get more strength and hear more people using the words. So we do have, I think, 3 pages that I pulled, and there's one. Eshele, you want to talk about some of these, like instead of using the word case, consider using child or parent or family, and kind of just give a little bit of background maybe to these or some of these?
Sure. So in terms of, and what you were just saying, right? So CHAMPS is a champion that's also using strength-based language. So we got our editor at Fostering Families Today magazine, that's Kim Hansel. So we just want to lift everybody up.
Absolutely.
And as we think about these, right, this is a work in progress. We are not finished with strength-based language at all. And as a basis, what Child Welfare League of America has done, and we've put together a list. And with that list, it's some of the most frequently used words or phrases. There's some 4-letter words on here that we'd like for you to stop using in your vocabulary. And it's not the ones that would offend most people, but it's the ones that we're talking about not using in foster care. So like you said, Irene, with case. So we don't want to ever know or refer to a child as a case. They are living, breathing, and they have some feelings about who they are, what they've been through, and all these things. So usually you would hear someone say, how many cases do you have? And really they're referring to how many children are you supporting? And as we think about the children that we support, and they would also use a case to identify a family. So how many cases do you have? And you might have, 20 cases, but there may be a number of family members that are there. So this is why we want to talk about how many children are we serving, how many parents are we serving, or how many families are we serving, because it's more than just that one child that's there. We're taking that family systems perspective. And then we're thinking about not using, or we're actually not thinking about it, we're not using the word home anymore, because what we know is that it's not the home that heals or hurts the child, it's the family that lives there. So we want to identify the people, then the change makers, the people with the transferable skills that are living within the 4 walls that are actually taking care of the child. The next one down is hard to place child. And what we know, and in Fostering Families Today magazine, we went from hard to place child to safe and nurturing families are hard to find. And we know that hard to place children is more like a blame the victim type of phrase, right? You're making the challenges that the child has faced or is facing now, the loss and trauma and the manifestation of that, right? The behaviors that people say, this is hard for me. They have placed that on the child. And as we're thinking about taking away that label and taking responsibility on the adult and on social services, what we know is that the child needs safe and nurturing families, and they're hard to find for individuals that have been impacted by trauma and loss.
Right.
You talked about your daughter and the challenges that she has. And as you talk about those challenges, it takes a special person with some transferable skills in order to do and to be there and to be that safe and nurturing family. The things you'll hear people often say is that the child was removed, right? They're removed from their parents' care. And we don't want that to be used as a common piece of the language at all. Right. The child wasn't removed. When the research was done for the Pride Model of Practice, children said they wanted to be known as being separated from their families and not removed from them. They actually said garbage and snow is removed, not kids. And that there's a trash truck that comes around every week that takes away the things that you no longer want. And it's not them. So when we're talking about honoring the relationships, if there was a separation, then hopefully there can be a joining.
Right.
Or a rejoining the family. So we also don't talk about children being placed in homes. We talk about children joining families. So you may hear, if you look down the list, third from the bottom, how many placements can the home take? So you think about the word placements, and just like our coffee cups, right? If I placed it on the table here, I could leave it forever and I never have to go back to it. And the house could crumble around it, and there would be nothing that this cup wouldn't feel a thing. Nobody would come looking for it. Nobody would make a big stink that I left it here. But if I was talking about a child and I left the child any place that wasn't safe, then somebody should come looking. So we have to think of children as more than just placements a moment in time, because they do have feelings, and somebody should be looking to see what happens with them. So where the new phrasing, right, is how many children can the family care for?
Yeah.
You also,
a quick personal thing. We had a boy who was like 13 that we had agreed to have join our family, and the case social worker brought him to our home. And he walked in, and instead of saying, hi, I'm going to use a fake name, but this is Johnny. He said, okay, Miss Clemens, here's your placement. He actually said that. Now, this is some years ago, of course. And this young man just kind of stood there, and then he looked at this worker, And the minute it came out of his mouth, I knew I was going to love having this kid in our family. But he looked at her and he said, I have a name. My name's Johnny. I'm not a plate you put on a table. That's what he said. I'm a real person.
I love it.
And I thought, oh man, you know, this kid's got it going on and he's not afraid to say it. Now I knew that would be challenging probably in a lot of situations with him because he was very, very vocal about how he felt, but he was able to do that and he had thought about it. He had been in four separate families prior to us, you know, in like 3 years, and it was just wrong. And but it just struck me, you know, that he was having to teach the caseworker about how you talk about kids, how you introduce kids to their new foster family. You use their name, right?
Mm-hmm. And sometimes we don't use children's names, and some of it's for confidentiality reasons.
Sure.
And we understand that we want to make sure that we are preserving confidentiality of children. But at some point, we also don't use that and we don't talk about the actual numbers and the impact, because if we did, we'd probably cry every day and we might not come back to the job. Because if I had to really say how many children were on my caseload or that I'm working with and really working for, then I might have some thoughts and feelings about that. And I might go home and I cried every day. Mm-hmm. And if I did, then how do I come back to some of the challenges that the children are facing, the families that they've been joined and separated from, and the number of families they're joined and separated from, the loss and trauma and all of these things? Because if I was placing a child in a home and they looked at me and said, don't leave me here, I would feel something. But if I was joining a child with a family and I took the time that it should take, then I may not be able to walk away so quickly.
Right.
So we use it as a way to gain separation because this is impactful. And it's impactful for everybody. Yes, yeah. Absolutely. But we also have to think about the preservation of the child that's there and what they deserve. Dignity, respect, to be seen as a person, to have things done on their behalf. And it starts with something as simple as the language and humanizing them, which is why we don't say visits anymore. When we think about visiting somebody, usually you visit somebody that can't visit you back. Cemetery, maybe jail, maybe a place that's not so pleasant. And we use the word visit to talk about what children do with their birth families or biological families. And our suggested language is that we stop talking about visitation and start talking about family time. And if we move into talking about family time, then there is a value placed on that time that the family's spending together, the things that they're going to do while they're there, and the feelings that we want them to walk away with after they've spent some time together. So we are going to value not only the individuals that are spending the time, but the process. And usually, you hear families say, oh, well, the child should no longer see the parent because they get upset afterwards. Well, it's another loss. It's another trauma that they're enduring every single time they visit with their parent, whether it went good or not. So now if we're talking about family time, there's an anticipation on the back end of family time that the parent is going to have some challenges and some feelings, as well as the child is going to have some feelings. So it can't be business as usual. Go do your homework, go do this, do that after they have family time, because we have to honor the feelings that they had while they were there.
Right.
So there's a lot of, phrases and things to consider when we're talking about language. And I hope that each of you will go and print out the word list and look at the language that you're using and challenge yourself. You can pay yourself a quarter every time, right? Challenge yourself to use, this family-friendly language.
Right. On the next page, I don't know if we can get that up there or not. There it goes. This is one that just really, really gets under my skin now. And it's, how many beds does the foster home have?
So
And
you
what
don't want
we're
to get me
asking
going
is
on
how
that.
many children can join this family, right? But how many beds does the foster home have? We hear that all the time. You know, it's all about how many beds, how many beds, how many beds.
How many beds and placements, right?
Yeah, that's it. And it just loses. I mean, it sterilizes, I guess, like you said, the feelings and emotions that we have to deal with when we actually make it real that these are human beings that we're talking about and not inanimate objects.
And
Because the
sometimes though,
language leads us to believe everything's inanimate.
and sometimes I understand and I get it that we have to distance ourselves from what we do. But when we think about certifying a family, then if I said, how many beds does the home have? And I would then have to take myself to who sleeps in those beds and who's going to take care of the individuals that sleep in the beds. Because if you're not able to take care of the children that are there, then why would why would an agency ever certify you to have a child join your family? So it's more than beds because the child's not sleeping all the time. Angels when you're sleeping, and then we got a real person, right? When you get up. So
Right.
as we're thinking about who's sleeping in the bed and the care that they need afterwards, then we have to make it living and breathing because they are.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
So I know there's some
a
narrative. Oh, go for it.
there's some narratives there, but I wanted to go to the next page if possible, because this is some kind of new things that have been added to the list of
Yes.
phrases, and I think it's interesting because as you talked about, this has evolved over time, and as time moves forward, new words and phrases are being identified that fall into this realm of being strength based. And so, you know, I just think it's important for people to understand that these are not things that just happen overnight. Right? It just takes so much time and effort to make the things happen, and for people to be thinking about this on an ongoing basis. And I'm so pleased that CWLA continues to this challenge all the time, to come up and identify new things that we need to look at about how we can say it differently. And this one talks about how we, you know, the first one, oh, we got so many kids AWOL or whatever. When in, you know, they're really an elopement or a runaway, and we make that personal again, then we know that they're on the street. They're prime victims for human traffickers. I mean, they're not safe. And again, AWOL, you know, we've heard that from the military and from all kinds of different situations. And I just hate it that we talk about kids who should be with family um, running away, being AWOL. AWOL just to me makes it sound like it's, oh, well, just another one, you know? But if we talk about that this is a child who, you know, ran from a foster family or ran from their group home or wherever it is, then we have to ask some questions about, well, how old, you know, does the child have any health issues? You know, are they diabetic? I mean, all these things that come to mind, and maybe it's because of the number of kids I fostered, but you know, every one of them came in with something that was going to be unique to them, oftentimes that would make it very difficult for them to be out there on their own without support. And so, you know, this list here has evolved, and to where we can use now better language that's more appropriate and more respectful of the individuals.
So the list that you're looking at on the screen now, I had the opportunity and the privilege actually of writing and co-authoring this article with a colleague that works at Saving Innocence. Her name is Amber Davies, as well as with Dr. Eileen Pastor. And as we wrote this article, we were really talking about that strength-based language and the use of the non-strength-based language when it comes to children that have been impacted by commercial and sexual exploitation.
Right.
So what you're seeing here is another article that Fostering Families Today allowed us to do. Look at that, and popped up on the screen as I was talking. So we had the opportunity to write this and to think about some of the, not only the legislation and things that have been passed, but the ways that children that have been impacted by commercial sexual exploitation are viewed and talked about, not only in the literature, but by law enforcement and some of our other partners. And as we begin to really infuse this language in for them, that AWOL, right? You're saying a child is AWOL. And like you mentioned earlier, that's a militarized term. And these kids are not soldiers, even though they feel like they're fighting every day. Mm-hmm. They feel like they're fighting every day, and we use words that put them in a place where they still have to. So same thing as saying triggers.
Right.
There's a lot of gun violence.
I have done that recently again, and I just almost bit my tongue when it came out of my mouth, because I was like, why did they just flow right out? I've tried so hard not to use that. One of the more recent boo-boos that I did, so it's real fresh on my mind yet.
Yeah. So when we think about triggers, then what we would like for people to think about and to begin using the language of is a trauma reminder. So we understand that there is an impact and something happens in that moment, but if we're teaching individuals on the other side of this trauma reminder how to deal and process, how to work through the grief and loss that they've experienced, then it's just a reminder of a previous event.
Yeah.
So as we transition to the trauma reminder, we also have some transferable skills from the adults that the children are working with to teach them how to deal with the reminders when they come up and to be a loss manager about the situations that they encounter. So some of the language that is associated with the commercial and sexual exploitation of children, what you hear in the literature is they're also talking about them as cases in placement, but the one that is stunning that we still use is talking about child prostitute. And we've labeled this child that has been impacted by someone else's negative doing as this label. And I really kind of can't even bring myself to say it many times because it's so untrue. And again, it's one of those blame the victim labels. And what we really want you to think about and to say, and it's a longer phrase for sure, but it's so much more fitting in talking about the experience of these children. So it's a child who experienced or was impacted by sexual exploitation. They can be known as survivors. They can be known as lived experience experts, because after after a child has endured and survived the exploitation and the inappropriateness of another individual, usually an adult, that's taking advantage of them, the last thing we want to label them as is a child prostitute. And we really want to start thinking there's no such thing as that, because it's the inappropriateness of someone else. Another one that stands out is you hear all the time child pornography. People are being arrested for child pornography. And that also puts the onus on the child. And it talks about the images that are related to them. But what we want you to know and understand is it's not child pornography. It's child abuse imagery. And when you call it child abuse imagery, you capture the act, right? And the punishable act of the child abuse that's happening to this person. And there's also a few other ones. It's child sexual abuse material or child sexual exploitation material. So we've got some ways now that we can identify what it is that's happening to the child and not putting them in, the situation where they have to now own that.
Right.
So when we look at this list and we started this off by separating the child from the disorder, or separating the child from the challenge that they're having. So some people say, oh, it's a CSEC kid. And they're not a CSEC kid. This is a child impacted by exploitation, a child impacted by trafficking. So we're taking the label and not allowing that label to be given or to be placed on the child, but really calling it what it is.
Exactly. Well, Eshele, so this is a hard topic, but it's one that, especially when you get into the sexual exploitation of kids, because it's so prevalent, and we hear more all the time, and we know that children in foster care or who have left foster care in various ways often wind up in that population. And we know now that what we're hearing is many of the unaccompanied minors that are coming across the border from Mexico and Central America um, are winding up in the same kinds of situations. And I know that's a fact because I used to work for an agency that worked with that population.
Yes.
And much harder to deal with because they don't have adults who are out there sticking up for them, right? They have parents in some other country, but they're not available. And it's how to support those kids too. I really hate to have to say that our time is up, but it is. And it goes too fast all the time. But with you, and certainly this topic that we're talking about for me is exciting, and yet it's emotional. But it just makes me renew my vows to do better every day. And I hope that those that are listening will try to embrace some of this as well. Um, and I want to invite people to give us a month or two, and we'll have a good training on this on the NFPA TI website for our training institute, where they can get a training certificate by taking your course. And then they'll have that information, and hopefully you'll have some handouts and things they can download and use and help go talk about it at their local support group or their local foster parent association meeting or their Sunday school class or wherever, to help people understand that we all need to embrace this, and we all need to show respect for these kids that are in the system, and for those that will be in the system, because evil is out there. And I don't think we're ever going to have a time where we don't have to have some kids in foster care. I do hope that with all the things that are happening in this country, and the laws that have changed about doing lots of prevention work up front, and taking care of people so they're not getting their kids removed because of poverty, that we're not going to have as many kids in the system, and that'll be a wonderful thing. But for those who do need the foster care system, the formal protection system, then we need it to be the very best it can be and the most respectful it can be for these kids. So that said, you have any final words for folks before we say goodbye?
Well, get connected to agencies that are actually out there doing the work. NFPA is one of those. The Child Welfare League of America is another. Saving Innocence is also, they're out there doing the work. And right now looking for foster parents to really step in and fill the space and the gap and be that one caring individual for a child that has experienced exploitation or that just needs support. So as we think about the labels and the word changes and all of those things, we just want to make sure that we are on the helping side of children's lives and not the hurting side. And as we're on the helping side, we use positive strength-based language so that even if they're not in the room, then we're saying something and speaking about them in ways that matter. And we allow them to understand, if they are hearing us, that they matter and that their lives matter, and that there is somebody out here that's willing to be an advocate and to fight for them and to call them exactly who they are, survivors and individuals impacted by foster care, not removed from their parents, but separated, to be rejoined with them, because it is about reunification.
Right.
And if they happen to need an alternative plan of adoption or legal guardianship, then they are one caring adult away from all of the future that they might want to see for themselves and that they have. So we want to be that one caring adult. And we want to be the people that are teaching other people how to use the language that affirms not only the challenges that they face and that their families have faced, but the future on the other side of that. We know and understand that this work is important. And again, as my cup said, I'm grateful. I'm grateful to do the work.
Yes. And I'm grateful that you do the work, because you do a great job of it. So thank you to everybody who viewed our episode today. And we'll see you in 1 month. Bye-bye.
See you soon.
This episode is brought to you in partnership with our friends at United Healthcare. For more information about United Healthcare, please visit www.uhc.com.